The first time Captain Zextar saw the human, she thought someone had made a terrible mistake. The creature standing in the docking bay of the trade station looked small and fragile compared to the towering Krillian warriors beside it. No armor, no visible weapons, no threatening posture. Just a bipedal mammal with pale skin, dark hair, and clothes that seemed designed more for comfort than combat. The human's most notable feature was its eyes, a strange blue-green color that seemed to track everything in the room simultaneously. "This is your recommended specialist?" Zextar asked the station administrator, her forearms gesturing dismissively. "This soft thing?" The administrator, a nervous Zentari with trembling tentacles, wrung his hands. "Captain, I know how it looks, but Marcus Chen has a reputation across 17 systems. When ships need someone for impossible jobs, they ask for him specifically." "Impossible jobs," Zextar repeated, studying the human more carefully. Marcus Chen stood relaxed, almost bored, as if being discussed like cargo didn't bother him at all. "What kind of impossible jobs?" "Hostage rescue from Void Raider strongholds, solo infiltration of hegemony black sites. He once cleared a derelict ship of 30 Nightmare-class bioweapons using only standard equipment." The administrator's voice dropped to a whisper. "Alone." Zextar's middle arms crossed while her upper ones remained ready near her plasma pistols. The Nightmare-class bioweapons claim had to be exaggeration. Those creatures had wiped out entire military companies. No single being could handle 30 of them. "If he's so capable, why isn't he commanding his own ship?" she asked. "Humans don't like command positions," the administrator explained. "They prefer to be specialists, advisors, the ones you call when everything else has failed." This made no sense to Zextar. In Krillian culture, the strongest led. Period. Why would any species choose to serve rather than command? She approached the human directly. "You are Marcus Chen?" "That's right." His voice was calm, unremarkable. No edge of aggression or submission, just neutral acknowledgement. "You claim to have destroyed 30 Nightmare-class bioweapons." "I didn't claim anything, but yes, I did." He met her gaze without challenge or deference. "The ship was the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, Hegemony Biolab accident. The crew barricaded themselves in the engine room. I got them out." "How?" Marcus shrugged. "Nightmares hunt by sound and vibration. I made them hunt each other instead." The simplicity of the answer irritated Zextar. Either this human was lying, or he possessed capabilities that shouldn't exist in such a small frame. She needed someone capable for her current job, but hiring unknown aliens was risky. Her reputation depended on successful missions. "My job requires infiltrating a hegemony research facility," she said. "My team and I will handle the main assault. You would be responsible for disabling their security grid and extracting the target scientist." "What kind of security?" "Automated defense systems, guard patrols, probably some experimental weapons we don't know about yet." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Payment?" 50,000 credits. 100,000. Plus equipment costs. Zextar's upper arms tensed. The human was demanding double her offer without even knowing the full scope of the mission. "That's unacceptable." "Then find someone else." Marcus turned to leave. "Wait." The word came out before Zextar could stop it. The truth was, she'd already tried finding someone else. 3 different specialists had turned down the job once they learned the target was a hegemony black site. "Why should I pay double?" Marcus faced her again. "Because you've already been turned down by everyone else on this station. Because your mission has a projected survival rate under 20% using conventional methods. And because I'm the only one who can get your scientist out alive." His confidence should have been offensive. Instead, it felt reassuring in a way Zextar couldn't explain. Something about the human's calm certainty suggested he wasn't boasting, just stating facts. 75,000, she countered. 100,000. Non-negotiable. Zextar's military training warned against trusting unknowns, but her instincts, honed through dozens of successful operations, said this human was different. There was something in his relaxed posture that reminded her of her best warriors, the ones who'd seen so much combat they'd stopped worrying about it. Agreed, but if you fail, you get nothing. Fair enough. Marcus extended his hand. When do we leave? The human handshake was another strange custom. His grip was firm but not crushing, lasting just long enough to confirm agreement. As their hands touched, Zextar noticed calluses on his fingers and palm, not from weapon use but from manual labor. This confused her further. Why would a specialist maintain hands suitable for construction work? 3 days later, Zextar's ship, the Savage Talon, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The Hegemony Research Facility hung in orbit around the system's fourth planet like a metallic spider, its 8 arms bristling with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Initial scan complete, reported Vel Nash, her navigation officer. 72 defense platforms, 3 patrol squadrons, energy shields rated for capital ship weapons. Zextar studied the tactical display. The facility was exactly as formidable as intelligence had suggested. Her original plan involved a direct assault on the main docking bay, while smaller teams infiltrated through maintenance ports. Quick, violent, and likely to result in heavy casualties. What do you think? She asked Marcus, who stood beside her command chair studying the same display. Give me 12 hours to observe their patrol patterns. 12 hours? We need to move quickly before they change their security protocols. Trust me. There was that confidence again. Against her better judgment, Zextar ordered her ship to a concealed position behind a large asteroid. They would wait and watch, even though every military instinct told her to strike immediately. For the next 12 hours, Marcus barely moved from the sensor station. He tracked patrol routes, recorded communication patterns, and analyzed the facility's energy signatures. Zextar's crew began muttering about the delay. Krillian warriors preferred action to observation. Time's up, Zextar announced. What did you learn? Marcus turned from the sensors, and for the first time since meeting him, Zextar saw something dangerous in his expression, not anger or bloodlust, but cold calculation. Their security is designed to prevent large-scale attacks, he said. Multiple redundant systems, overlapping fields of fire, automated responses to any detected threat. But it has a weakness. Which is? It assumes attackers will behave logically. Before Zextar could ask what that meant, Marcus was moving toward the airlock where his equipment waited. She followed, finding him strapping on what looked like a standard EVA suit with some unusual modifications. You're going alone? She asked. For the first part, yes. Your team will have their own role once I've opened a path. What path? The facility is completely surrounded by defense platforms. Marcus activated his suit's systems and picked up a small device Zextar didn't recognize. Captain, in human military history, there's a concept called audacity. It means doing something so unexpected that the enemy can't respond effectively. That sounds like a good way to get killed. Sometimes. But it also works. He sealed his helmet and moved toward the airlock controls. Give me 2 hours, then bring your team to Docking Bay 7 on the facility's lower arm. Docking Bay 7? That's in the middle of their heaviest defenses. But Marcus had already cycled through the airlock. Through the external cameras, Zextar watched his small figure drift toward the massive facility using only maneuvering thrusters. No stealth field, no protective escort, nothing to hide him from the dozens of sensors that should have detected him immediately. Minutes passed. The facility's patrol patterns continued normally. No alarms, no response squadrons launching, no weapons charging. Marcus simply drifted closer like a piece of space debris. How is this possible? whispered Techmore, her weapons officer. Zextar had no answer. By every tactical principle she knew, the human should have been vaporized the moment he came within scanner range. Instead, he was somehow invisible to sensors designed to detect gnats in a solar storm. An hour into Marcus's approach, something impossible happened. One of the facility's patrol squadrons broke formation and began firing on each other. The lead ship's weapons tore through its wingman's shields, causing a massive explosion that damaged 2 other vessels. "Mechanical failure?" suggested Velnash. "All 4 ships simultaneously?" Zextar shook her head. "That's not mechanical failure." More explosions blossomed around the facility as defense platforms began targeting each other instead of maintaining their protective positions. Within 30 minutes, nearly half the station's defenses had been eliminated by friendly fire. Zextar's communicator crackled with Marcus's voice. "Docking Bay 7 is clear. You have a 10-minute window before they restore communications." "How did you—" "No time to explain. Move now." Against every instinct, Zextar ordered her team into action. The savage Talon raced toward the facility, expecting to be destroyed by the remaining defenses. Instead, they reached Docking Bay 7 without a single shot being fired. The bay doors stood open, welcoming them like an invitation. Inside the facility, they found Marcus waiting in the main corridor. He'd somehow acquired a hegemony uniform that fit him perfectly and carried what appeared to be administrative credentials. "The target scientist is in Laboratory Complex C, Section 14, he said, handing Zextar a data pad. "These are the current guard rotations and security codes." "Where did you get this information?" "From their own security office. I've been walking around for the past hour. Apparently, if you act like you belong somewhere, most people assume you do." This violated everything Zextar understood about infiltration. High-security facilities didn't just let strangers wander their corridors, regardless of how confident they appeared. "What about the defense platforms that destroyed each other?" Marcus smiled for the first time since she'd met him. "I convinced their targeting computers that the other platforms were enemy vessels." "How?" "Humans are good at lying to machines." Before Zextar could demand a better explanation, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in red, and automated announcements warned of intruders in multiple sections. "They've discovered something," Velnash said, checking his scanner. "No," Marcus replied calmly. "I triggered those alarms. In about 30 seconds, 90% of the facility's security personnel will converge on the opposite side of the station to deal with a simulated breacher attack in the main reactor chamber." As if responding to his words, the sound of running feet echoed from corridors leading away from their position. Within minutes, the area around Laboratory Complex C was nearly deserted. "The path to the scientist is clear," Marcus announced. "You have approximately 15 minutes before they realize the reactor breach is fake." Zextar stared at the human in bewilderment. In less than 2 hours, he had single-handedly neutralized a facility designed to withstand major military assaults. He'd done it without firing a shot, without violence, and apparently without breaking a sweat. "How is this possible?" she asked. "Humans think differently than most species," Marcus explained as they moved toward the laboratory complex. "We're very good at seeing patterns, predicting behavior, and exploiting weaknesses. It's why we survived long enough to reach space. But the security systems are designed by logical minds to stop logical attacks. Humans aren't always logical." They reached Laboratory Complex C to find the target scientist, an elderly Zentari named Dr. Cawthlan, working alone in his laboratory. He looked up as they entered, showing no surprise at seeing armed strangers. "You're here for the research data," he said calmly. "We're here to get you out," Zextar corrected. "The data is secondary." "Impossible. The hegemony will never stop hunting me if I defect." Marcus stepped forward. "Dr. Cawthlan, Your research into quantum consciousness transfer could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy, but the hegemony wants to weaponize it. We're offering you a chance to continue your work for peaceful purposes. The scientist's tentacles quivered with emotion. You understand my research? I've read your published papers. Brilliant work, especially your theories on consciousness, backup, and transfer. This was news to Zextar. Marcus had never mentioned being familiar with advanced quantum physics. When had he found time to study the scientist's work? If I come with you, Dr. Coughlin said slowly, I would need guarantees about how my research will be used. You'll have complete control over its application, Marcus promised, and protection from anyone who might want to misuse it. From humans? Especially from humans. Something in Marcus's tone convinced the scientist. Dr. Coughlin began gathering essential data crystals from his workstation, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. The extraction route? Zextar asked. Marcus checked his wrist display. Security teams will return to this section in about 8 minutes. We need to be at the docking bay before then. They made it with 30 seconds to spare. As the Savage Talon departed the facility, Zextar watched the hegemony forces scrambling to organize a pursuit. Half their ships were still damaged from the earlier friendly fire incidents, and their command structure was in chaos from the false alarms. By the time enemy reinforcements arrived, Zextar's ship was already jumping to hyperspace. In the relative safety of hyperspace, Zextar found Marcus in the ship's small observation lounge, staring out at the swirling energy patterns outside. How did you really do it? She asked. Do what? All of it. The defense platforms, the security systems, walking through a high-security facility like you owned it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Humans have been fighting each other for most of our history, he said finally. We got very good at warfare, infiltration, and deception because we had to. When we reached space, we discovered that most alien species fight very differently than we do. Different how? More honorably, more logically. Most species see warfare as a contest of strength or technology. Humans see it as a puzzle to be solved. And that makes you better at it? Not better, just different. We approach problems from angles other species don't consider. Zextar sat beside him. Is that why humans prefer advisory roles instead of command? Partly. But also because we understand something most species don't. Which is? Marcus turned to look at her directly. Power isn't about commanding others. It's about being indispensable to those who do command. The observation hit Zextar like a physical blow. In one sentence, Marcus had explained why every successful military leader she knew sought human advisors for crucial operations. Not because humans were superior, but because they offered capabilities that complemented other species' strengths. Is that why you demanded such high payment? She asked. No, I demanded high payment because I'm worth it. His blunt honesty made Zextar laugh, despite herself. You certainly proved that today. Today was easy, Marcus said. The hard part comes later. What do you mean? Word will spread about what happened here. Every military commander in 3 sectors will want to hire the human who broke hegemony security. Prices for human specialists will go up, and availability will go down. That sounds like good business for you. Marcus shook his head. It means bigger jobs, more dangerous situations, higher stakes. Doesn't that worry you? No, Marcus said simply. It's what we do. Over the following days, as they transported Dr. Coughlin to his new research facility, Zextar observed Marcus more carefully. He spent time learning about each crew member's background, asking questions about their families, their home worlds, their personal interests. Not in a calculating way, but with genuine curiosity. He helped Velnash repair a malfunctioning navigation computer, showing knowledge of systems the navigator had never seen before. He discussed advanced metallurgy with Techmore, offering suggestions for improving weapon efficiency. He even played what appeared to be chess with Dr. Cothlin, though Zextar couldn't follow the complex rules they seemed to be inventing as they went. "Your human is unusual," Dr. Cothlin told her privately. "Most species compartmentalize knowledge. Humans seem to connect everything they learn into a single vast network of understanding." Is that why he was able to defeat the facility's security? Partly. But I think there's something more. Humans appear to have evolved what you might call social intelligence. They understand how individuals and groups will behave under specific circumstances. You mean psychology? Beyond psychology. They seem to instinctively grasp the underlying patterns that drive behavior. It makes them extremely effective at predicting and manipulating responses. Zextar thought about this as she watched Marcus explain some Earth game called poker to her crew. Within an hour, beings from 4 different species were laughing, bluffing, and bonding over colored cards and small metal tokens. "Dangerous and unstoppable," she murmured to herself. "What was that?" asked Dr. Cothlin. "Something the station administrator said about humans, that they're dangerous and unstoppable. But also essential," the scientist added thoughtfully. "Yes, I can see that. They're dangerous because they think so differently from us. Unstoppable because they refuse to accept impossible as an answer. But essential because they can solve problems the rest of us can't even see." As her ship approached its destination, Zextar realized she was facing a problem she hadn't anticipated. According to their contract, Marcus's job would end once they delivered Dr. Cothlin safely. But the idea of losing access to his capabilities bothered her more than she cared to admit. "What's your next assignment?" she asked him. "Haven't decided yet. Several offers, but nothing interesting." "I might have ongoing work that would suit your skills." Marcus studied her carefully. "What kind of work?" "The kind that requires someone who thinks differently from everyone else." "Sounds dangerous." "Probably." "Unstoppable odds?" "Very likely." Marcus smiled. "When do we start?" 6 months after the Hegemony Facility mission, Marcus Chen had become the most requested human specialist in 3 sectors. His reputation spread through military circles like a viral infection. Everyone knew someone who'd worked with the human who could solve impossible problems. Captain Zextar had hired him for 4 additional missions, each more complex than the last. He'd helped rescue hostages from a Void Raider stronghold by convincing the raiders their own prisoners were infected with a fictional plague. He'd stopped a war between 2 mining colonies by exposing the corporate conspiracy that had manufactured their conflict. Most recently, he'd prevented the theft of experimental weapons by making the thieves steal worthless decoys instead. Now, sitting in the command center of the mercenary ship Bloodclaw, Marcus faced his biggest challenge yet. "The situation is simple," explained Commander Thraktos. "A massive Gorvak warrior whose scars told stories of 100 battles. The planet Nexus 7 has been taken by Crimson Fleet pirates. 2 million civilians are trapped in the capital city. The local defense forces surrendered after the pirates threatened to bombard population centers." Marcus studied the tactical display showing Nexus 7's orbital space. Crimson Fleet ships formed a blockade around the planet. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and over 100 fighter craft. It was more firepower than most planetary navies possessed. "What's the official military response?" Marcus asked. "There isn't one," said Captain Vexakila, the Zalani officer who'd assembled this particular mission. "Nexus 7 is technically an independent world. No government wants to risk war with the Crimson Fleet over someone else's territory. But we're going to try anyway?" "We're mercenaries," Thraktos rumbled. "The civilians' families have pooled their resources. They're offering everything they have to get their people back." Marcus nodded. Mercenaries often took jobs governments couldn't or wouldn't handle. It was dangerous work, but it served a purpose in the galaxy's gray areas. "What assets do we have?" he asked. Captain Vex's Keela gestured to the assembled group. 6 ships, the Blood Claw, my vessel Silent Strike, 3 escort frigates, and 1 support carrier. Total complement, 200 fighters and 800 ground troops. Against 12 heavy cruisers and supporting vessels. Yes. With 2 million civilians at risk if we fail. Yes. Marcus was quiet for several minutes, processing the tactical situation. The assembled captains waited patiently. They'd learned that humans needed time to think through complex problems. "Tell me about the Crimson Fleet's leadership," Marcus said finally. "Admiral Kreshvor," Thraktos spat. "Ruthless, intelligent, completely without honor. He's conquered 14 systems in the past 2 years. How does he maintain control over such a large fleet?" "Fear and profit sharing," Captain Vex Keela answered. "His crews know that following orders means wealth and survival. Disobedience means death." "What about the individual ship captains? Are they loyal to Kreshvor personally or to the fleet's success?" "An interesting question," mused Captain Dexaroon of the frigate Stormwind. "Most pirates follow strength. If Kreshvor appeared weak, his captains would turn on him," Marcus finished. "But he's not weak. He's sitting in orbit around a conquered planet with overwhelming firepower." "So, how do we make him appear weak?" asked Thraktos. Marcus stood and walked to the tactical display, studying the enemy formation. The Crimson Fleet ships held standard blockade positions, maximum coverage with overlapping fields of fire. It was an efficient arrangement that prevented any approach to the planet. "We don't make him appear weak," Marcus said slowly. "We make him actually weak." "Explain," Vex Keela demanded. "The Crimson Fleet's strength comes from unity. 12 cruisers working together can defeat almost any force, but what if they weren't working together? You want to split their fleet? I want to fracture it. Pirates are greedy by nature. They follow leaders who bring them profit and victory. But pirates are also suspicious and competitive. They constantly worry about being cheated or betrayed." Thraktos leaned forward, interested despite himself. "Continue." "Admiral Kreshvor has been successful because he's managed to keep his captains focused on external targets. But what if we gave them reasons to focus on each other instead?" Marcus began manipulating the tactical display, highlighting different ship groups in the Crimson Fleet formation. "Look at their positioning," he said. 4 groups of 3 cruisers each, plus supporting vessels. Classic pirate organization. Each group represents a different clan or faction that joined the fleet. "You're suggesting we turn the clans against each other?" "I'm suggesting we remind them that they were enemies before they became allies." Captain Vex Keela's eyes narrowed. "How?" "Information warfare. Pirates communicate constantly, coordinating raids, dividing loot, sharing intelligence. Their communication networks are their weakness. We intercept their transmissions? We don't intercept them. We add to them." Marcus pulled up communication protocols for known pirate organizations. "Every clan has ancient grudges against the others. Territorial disputes, betrayed alliances, stolen resources. What if those old conflicts started affecting current operations?" "Fake communications," Thraktos rumbled. "Make each clan think the others are planning betrayal. Not fake communications. Real communications that reveal inconvenient truths." Marcus began outlining his plan. It was complex, requiring precise timing and detailed knowledge of pirate psychology. More importantly, it required the mercenary fleet to take enormous risks while appearing to do very little. "This is your strategy?" Captain Dexaron asked incredulously. "We hide behind asteroids and send messages?" "We hide behind asteroids and tell the truth," Marcus corrected. "Pirates lie constantly, but they're very good at recognizing lies from each other. Truth, however, can be devastating. What truths? Vexkila asked. Marcus smiled. Commander Thraktos, how much do you know about Crimson Fleet internal politics? More than I'd like. Why? Because Admiral Kreshivor has been hiding something from his captains, something that could destroy their alliance if they found out. 3 hours later, the first phase of Marcus's plan began. The mercenary ships had positioned themselves behind a large asteroid field, using the gravitational interference to mask their signatures. Meanwhile, Marcus worked with communication specialists from each ship to prepare what he called truth bombs. Target the first message to Captain Volkstar of the cruiser Blood Drinker, Marcus instructed. Make it appear to come from Admiral Kreshivor's personal communication system. What should it say? Asked the technician. Marcus handed her a data pad. Admiral Kreshivor has been keeping detailed records of each captain's performance and loyalty ratings. This message contains Volkstar's file, including some unflattering assessments and plans to replace him after the current operation. Is this information real? Completely real. I accessed it from Kreshivor's personal archives 3 days ago. The technician looked puzzled. How did you access the Admiral's personal archives? I sent him a message purporting to be from a hegemony spy offering to sell fleet positions. When he opened the message to investigate, it installed a monitoring program on his systems. He fell for an obvious spy recruitment message? He fell for his own greed. Pirates always think they're smarter than everyone else. The first truth bomb was transmitted during the fleet's regular communication window. Within minutes, Captain Volkstar was demanding a private conference with Admiral Kreshivor. Their heated conversation, conducted over open channels, was heard by every ship in the fleet. You question my loyalty? Volkstar snarled. I've served this fleet for 3 years. Those records are classified, Kreshivor shot back. How did you access them? Someone sent them to me. Someone who wanted me to know what you really think of your loyal captains. The conversation ended abruptly, but the damage was done. Every pirate captain was now wondering what Kreshivor's files said about them. Marcus waited exactly 1 hour before releasing the second truth bomb. This time, the target was Captain Nethrix of the cruiser Void Stalker. Her file contained detailed plans for redistributing ship assignments after the Nexus 7 operation, plans that would break up existing clan alliances and reduce the power of veteran captains. The third truth bomb revealed Admiral Kreshivor's secret negotiations with hegemony representatives. While publicly claiming independence, Kreshivor had been discussing terms for surrendering the fleet in exchange for amnesty and a position in the hegemony navy. By the 6th hour of the operation, the Crimson Fleet communication networks were buzzing with accusations, demands for explanations, and threats of mutiny. 3 captains had withdrawn their ships from the main formation, claiming they needed to conduct security reviews of their own crews. It's working, reported Captain Vexkila from her position monitoring enemy communications. Their formation is breaking apart. Phase 2, Marcus announced. The second phase involved what Marcus called profitable distractions. Using captured Crimson Fleet communication codes, the mercenary ships began broadcasting false intelligence about valuable targets in nearby systems. A hegemony treasure ship supposedly disabled near the Kepler system, an undefended research station containing experimental weapons, a convoy of luxury vessels carrying corporate executives. Each false lead was carefully crafted to appeal to different pirate clans. The information was specific enough to be believable, but required immediate action to be profitable. 3 ships are breaking off to investigate the Kepler target, reported Thraktos. 2 more are heading for the research station. That's 5 cruisers and their escorts out of position, Marcus noted. Phase 3. Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. With the Crimson Fleet's formation weakened by defections and internal conflict, the mercenary ships would reveal themselves and appear to begin a conventional assault on the planet. Are you certain about this? Captain Vexkila asked, as her ships prepared to leave the asteroid field. "If Admiral Kreshavor rallies his remaining forces, we'll be outnumbered 4-1. "He won't rally them," Marcus said confidently. "By now, he's more worried about surviving his own captains than fighting us." The mercenary fleet emerged from the asteroid field in full attack formation, making no attempt at stealth. Their arrival was immediately detected by Crimson Fleet sensors, triggering exactly the response Marcus had predicted. Instead of coordinating a unified defense, the remaining pirate captains began arguing over who should respond to the threat. Some wanted to maintain the blockade. Others demanded immediate attack. Several insisted on waiting for the scattered ships to return. Admiral Kreshavor's attempts to impose order only made the situation worse. His captains, already suspicious after the leaked files, questioned every command and demanded explanations for every tactical decision. "This is Commander Thraktos of the mercenary vessel Bloodclaw," Thraktos announced over open channels. "Admiral Kreshavor, you are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender your fleet and release the civilians on Nexus 7. The response was immediate chaos. Half the Crimson Fleet captains wanted to fight. The other half wanted to negotiate. Several ships began maneuvering for better positions, creating confusion and communication conflicts throughout the formation. "Now for the final truth," Marcus said quietly. The last truth bomb was the most devastating. It revealed Admiral Kreshavor's secret personal fortune, resources he'd been hiding from his captains while claiming the fleet needed to take increasingly dangerous raids to maintain profitability. The revelation that their admiral had been hoarding wealth while demanding they risk their lives for smaller shares triggered the final collapse of Crimson Fleet unity. 3 captains immediately demanded Kreshavor's removal. 2 others began positioning their ships to attack the admiral's flagship. Within minutes, the Crimson Fleet had devolved into a 3-way civil war. Ships that had been allies for years began firing on each other. The carefully maintained formation dissolved into chaos as captains chose sides or attempted to flee with their personal vessels. "Phase 4, Marcus announced. The mercenary ships bypassed the fighting pirates entirely, descending to Nexus 7's surface to begin civilian evacuation. The planet's spaceports were undefended, their guards having fled when the orbital battle began. "How did you know this would work?" Captain Vexkila asked as her troops secured the main spaceport. "Pirates are fundamentally selfish," Marcus explained. "They'll cooperate as long as cooperation serves their interests, but they'll turn on each other the moment they think they're being cheated. Admiral Kreshavor kept his fleet together through strength and shared profit, but he also kept secrets. Secrets are poison in pirate organizations." "But how did you know what secrets he was keeping?" Marcus pulled up his personal communication device, showing a complex web of intercepted messages, financial records, and personnel files. "I've been monitoring Crimson Fleet communications for 2 months, building profiles of their leadership structure. Pirates communicate constantly but rarely encrypt personal messages. They assume no one is listening because no one has reason to care about their internal politics." "You've been planning this operation for 2 months?" "I've been preparing for the possibility of this operation for 2 months. When Captain Vexkila contacted me about the Nexus 7 situation, I already had the intelligence needed to exploit Crimson Fleet weaknesses." The evacuation proceeded smoothly. 2 million civilians were transported to safety aboard converted cargo vessels while the Crimson Fleet continued fighting among themselves. By the time Admiral Kreshavor managed to restore some semblance of order, the mercenary fleet was already jumping to hyperspace with the rescued population. Later, aboard the Bloodclaw, the assembled captains tried to understand what they'd witnessed. "We defeated a force 4 times our size without firing a shot," Captain Dexerun said, shaking his head. "How is that possible?" "We didn't defeat them," Marcus corrected. "We helped them defeat themselves." "By telling them the truth," Thraktos mused. "I'm beginning to understand why aliens find humans so unsettling." "How so?" Most species see conflict as a contest of strength, technology, or resources. We fight until someone proves superiority. But humans see conflict as a psychological puzzle. You don't just want to win, you want to make your enemies destroy themselves. Marcus considered this. It's not that humans are more manipulative than other species. We're just more aware of how psychology affects behavior. When you understand what motivates people, you can predict how they'll react to different situations and use those reactions against them, or use them to solve problems without violence. The Crimson Fleet was eventually going to collapse anyway. Pirate alliances always do. We just accelerated the process while they were threatening innocent civilians. Captain Vex Aquila looked thoughtful. You're saying the outcome was inevitable? The outcome was probable. Pirate organizations have predictable failure patterns. They succeed as long as external pressures keep them focused outward. But they always eventually turn on each other when those pressures are removed, or when internal stresses become too great. So you created internal stress. I revealed internal stress that already existed. Admiral Kreshivor really was keeping secrets from his captains. The clan leaders really did have old grudges against each other. The wealth distribution really was unfair. I just made sure everyone knew the truth at the same time. Over the following days, as the rescued civilians were delivered to safe systems, Marcus found himself in high demand. Representatives from 3 different governments wanted to hire him for similar operations. Military commanders sought consultation on dealing with pirate threats. Even some former Crimson Fleet captains, now leading independent crews, contacted him about potential employment. You've become famous again, Captain Vex Aquila observed. Every military strategist in the sector wants to understand how you defeated the Crimson Fleet. They want to understand the techniques, Marcus replied. But techniques aren't the important part. What is the important part? Understanding that every conflict is really about information. Who knows what, when they know it, and how they react to what they know. Control information flow, and you control the conflict. Is that a human insight? It's a survival insight. Humans have been using information warfare for thousands of years because we had to. We weren't the strongest or fastest species on our homeworld, so we became the smartest. We learned to use knowledge as a weapon. Commander Thraktos joined their conversation. My government has authorized me to offer you a permanent position as strategic advisor. They're willing to pay extremely well for exclusive access to your capabilities. Marcus shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but I work better as an independent contractor. Why? Because the moment I become part of any organization, I lose the flexibility to see problems objectively. Military hierarchies, political structures, corporate chains of command, they all create blind spots and biases that limit tactical options. You prefer to remain neutral? I prefer to remain effective. Sometimes that means working for governments, sometimes for corporations, sometimes for mercenaries, and sometimes for civilian groups trying to protect themselves. Each situation requires different approaches. Thraktos nodded slowly. You mentioned that controlling information flow controls conflict. What information would you need to help my government deal with insurgents in the Tau sector? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'd need to understand what the insurgents want, what your government wants, and what the civilian population wants. Then I'd need to know what each group believes about the other 2 groups. And then? Then I'd look for ways to give each group accurate information about the other's real motivations. Most conflicts are based on misunderstanding and fear. When people understand what others actually want, they often discover they're fighting about problems that could be solved through negotiation. That sounds almost peaceful. Violence should always be the last option, not the first one. Humans learned that lesson the hard way. Captain Vex Aquila looked skeptical. Humans have a reputation for being quite violent. We have a reputation for being effective at violence when violence becomes necessary, Marcus corrected. But we also have thousands of years of experience learning when violence isn't necessary. And when is it necessary? Marcus's expression became serious. When dealing with people who prefer violence to negotiation. When protecting innocents from those who would harm them. When facing opponents who see compromise as weakness rather than wisdom. Like the Crimson Fleet? The Crimson Fleet represented a specific type of threat, organized predators who profited from harming others. They couldn't be negotiated with because their entire economic model depended on conquest and exploitation. In cases like that, the goal becomes neutralizing the threat with minimum casualties and collateral damage, which you accomplished by making them fight each other instead of fighting civilians, which I accomplished by exposing the truth about their organization. The fighting was their choice. 3 weeks later, as Marcus prepared to leave the Blood Claw for his next assignment, Captain Vex Keela approached him with a question that had been troubling her. "Marcus, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you ever worry about the power you have? The ability to manipulate entire organizations, to start conflicts or prevent them?" Marcus paused in his packing. "Every day." "How do you handle that responsibility?" "By remembering that power without purpose is just destruction. I use these capabilities to protect people who can't protect themselves and to solve problems that can't be solved through conventional means. The moment I start using them for personal gain or ego satisfaction, I become part of the problem I'm supposed to be solving." "Is that a human philosophy?" "It's a survival philosophy. Species that use their advantages responsibly tend to prosper. Species that abuse their advantages tend to destroy themselves." Vex Keela nodded thoughtfully. "Will we work together again?" "Probably. The galaxy has a lot of problems that require unconventional solutions." "And humans are the best at unconventional solutions?" Marcus smiled. "Humans are the best at being human. Every species has unique strengths. The key is learning how to combine those strengths effectively." As his shuttle departed for the next assignment, Marcus reflected on the past 6 months. Each mission had taught him something new about how different species approached problems and conflict. More importantly, each mission had demonstrated that cooperation between species could accomplish things no single species could achieve alone. The galaxy was full of dangers that required human ingenuity to solve, but it was also full of opportunities that required alien wisdom to recognize. Finding the balance between those perspectives was perhaps the most important challenge facing the civilized worlds, and it was exactly the kind of challenge that made Marcus Chen feel dangerous, unstoppable, and absolutely essential. 1 year after the Crimson Fleet operation, Marcus Chen received the kind of call that changed galactic history. "Mr. Chen," said Chancellor Vorthak of the Galactic Trade Consortium, his image flickering on the secure communication channel, "we need your help with a problem that threatens every civilized world in 3 sectors." Marcus studied the alien leader carefully. The consortium rarely contacted individual specialists directly. They had entire departments dedicated to handling security issues. For the Chancellor himself to make contact suggested something extraordinary. "What kind of problem?" Marcus asked. "The kind that could end interstellar civilization as we know it." 6 hours later, Marcus stood in the consortium's most secure briefing room, surrounded by representatives from 12 different species and 15 separate governments. The assembled group included military commanders, intelligence directors, and diplomatic officials, the kind of beings who usually spent their time arguing about territorial boundaries and trade agreements. Today, they sat in unprecedented unity, all focused on the same terrifying threat. "The entity calls itself the Collective," explained Admiral Rexthon of the Hegemony Navy. "It appeared in the Outer Rim 3 months ago and has already assimilated 47 systems." "Assimilated?" Marcus asked. "Complete technological integration," answered Director Kessaila of Consortium Intelligence. They don't conquer worlds, they absorb them. Ships, stations, even individual beings become part of a single networked consciousness. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the collective's expansion pattern. 47 systems in 3 months meant they were moving faster than any military force in recorded history. More disturbing was the pattern itself, not random conquest, but a systematic absorption of strategic locations. "What do we know about their technology?" he asked. "Far beyond anything we've encountered," Admiral Rexthon admitted. "Their ships appear to be biological in nature, capable of self-repair and adaptation. Our weapons are effective for the first few engagements, then become progressively less useful as they adapt to our tactics." "How long before they reach the core worlds?" 6 months, maybe less, Director Casilla said grimly. "They're accelerating as they absorb more resources." Marcus walked around the tactical display, studying the collective's movements from different angles. Something about the expansion pattern bothered him, though he couldn't immediately identify what. "Have you attempted communication?" "Repeatedly," answered Ambassador Thelvor of the Diplomatic Corps. "They respond to every contact attempt with the same message. Resistance delays perfection. Join willingly and preserve your uniqueness. Resist and lose everything." "They want to preserve uniqueness?" "According to intercepted communications, absorbed beings retain their individual consciousness within the collective network. They claim it's a form of immortality, becoming part of something greater while maintaining personal identity." This was not what Marcus had expected. Most conquering forces sought to dominate or replace existing civilizations. The collective seemed to want something more complex, integration rather than destruction. "What's the official military response?" he asked. "Combined fleet operations," Admiral Rex Thon replied. "Every major government is contributing ships and personnel for a coordinated defense of the core worlds." "How large is this combined fleet?" 12,000 ships, 4 million personnel, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And you expect this force to be successful?" "We expect it to be sufficient," the Admiral said carefully. "But you're not certain." "We're not certain of anything when dealing with unknown technology and adaptive capabilities," Director Casilla admitted. "That's why we called you." Marcus sat down, processing everything he'd learned. The collective represented a fundamentally different type of threat than anything he'd encountered before. Pirates could be manipulated through greed and suspicion. Military forces had predictable command structures and tactical doctrines. But a networked consciousness with adaptive technology presented challenges that conventional strategy couldn't address. "What exactly do you want me to do?" he asked. "Find a way to stop them," Chancellor Vorthak said simply. "Every government, every species, every military organization in civilized space has contributed their best strategic minds to this problem. None of them have produced a viable solution." "So you turn to a human." "We turn to the human who has consistently solved problems that everyone else considered impossible." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, studying the data they'd provided. The assembled officials waited patiently, having learned that human strategic thinking required time for complex analysis. "I need to see the collective in action," Marcus said finally. "See them?" Admiral Rexthon looked confused. "Mr. Chen, these entities are incredibly dangerous. Direct observation would require entering their territory, which would almost certainly result in assimilation or death. I can't develop effective countermeasures without understanding how they operate. Remote sensor data and survivor reports aren't sufficient." "What are you proposing?" "A reconnaissance mission to recently assimilated systems. Small, fast, heavily shielded. Get close enough to observe their integration processes and tactical capabilities." Director Casilla shook her head. "The risk is unacceptable. If the collective captures you, they'll gain access to everything you know about our defensive preparations." If they can capture me, Marcus corrected. But the bigger risk is developing a defense strategy based on incomplete information. You're willing to risk assimilation? I'm willing to risk failure if it means preventing galactic extinction. After 3 hours of debate, the consortium officials reluctantly approved Marcus's reconnaissance mission. They provided him with the fastest scout ship available, equipped with experimental stealth technology and emergency destruction systems. Marcus chose a single companion for the mission, Dr. Cothlin, the quantum consciousness researcher he'd rescued from the hegemony facility a year earlier. "Why me?" the elderly scientist asked as they prepared for departure. "Because if the collective really does preserve individual consciousness within a networked system, I need someone who understands consciousness transfer technology," Marcus explained. "Your research might be the key to understanding how they operate. And if we're captured, then we learn about their assimilation process from the inside." Dr. Coughlin's tentacles trembled with nervousness. "That's not particularly reassuring." "I know, but sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to get close enough to see it clearly." The reconnaissance mission launched from consortium space using a circuitous route that avoided known collective territory. Their destination was the Epsilon Eridani system, recently assimilated and located near the edge of collective expansion. The journey took 6 days, during which Marcus and Dr. A. Coughlin analyzed every piece of available data about the collective. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. "Their ships are definitely biological," Dr. Coughlin observed, studying sensor readings from previous encounters. "But the biological components appear to be artificially created rather than evolved. This suggests they're using advanced biotechnology to construct vessels optimized for specific functions." "What about the networking capability?" Marcus asked. "Quantum entanglement communication systems. Each ship is in constant contact with every other ship across any distance. When one unit learns something, they all learn it instantly. That explains their rapid adaptation to our tactics. More than that, it suggests they're not just sharing tactical information, they're sharing consciousness itself. Every engagement teaches the entire collective simultaneously." This was a sobering realization. Fighting the collective wasn't like fighting a traditional enemy where defeated units took their knowledge with them. Every ship destroyed was a learning experience for every other ship in their fleet. "How do you fight an enemy that learns from every defeat?" Dr. Coughlin asked. "You don't fight them," Marcus said slowly. "You teach them." "Teach them what?" "That they're solving the wrong problem." When they reached the Epsilon Eridani system, what they found defied every expectation. The planets hadn't been conquered or destroyed, they'd been transformed into something entirely different. Where once there had been industrial worlds with cities, space stations, and orbital platforms, now there were vast biological constructs that seemed to grow directly from the planetary surfaces. Ships moved between these constructs in patterns that resembled blood flow more than military formations. "It's not an invasion," Dr. Coughlin whispered, staring at the sensor displays. "It's a metamorphosis." Marcus was recording everything, but his attention was focused on something specific, the patterns of activity they were observing. The collective's behavior wasn't random or even strategically purposeful. It was artistic. "They're creating something," he said. "All of this expansion, all of this assimilation. It's part of a larger design." "What kind of design?" Before Marcus could answer, their ship's stealth systems were penetrated by scanning beams that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The collective had detected them. "Evasive maneuvers," Marcus ordered, but it was too late. 3 biological ships emerged from what appeared to be empty space, surrounding the scout vessel in a triangular formation. "Unknown vessel," came a voice that sounded like a chorus, speaking in perfect harmony. "State your purpose for observing our creation." Marcus made a decision that would have terrified any military commander in civilized space. He opened communication channels and responded honestly. "We came to understand your intentions," he said. "Our civilizations are afraid that you plan to destroy them. Destruction is inefficient. We seek integration and improvement. But integration without consent is conquest. Consent requires understanding. Understanding requires experience. We offer both." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Marcus asking careful questions about the collective's goals and methods. What emerged was a picture of entities that saw themselves as gardeners rather than conquerors. "Your civilizations are isolated, competitive, wasteful," the collective explained. "Billions of beings live and die without contributing their knowledge to the greater whole. We offer unity, immortality, and purpose." "But you're forcing this unity on beings who haven't asked for it." "Children do not ask for education, yet parents provide it because they understand its value. We provide evolution because we understand its necessity." Marcus began to see the fundamental problem. The collective wasn't evil or even malicious. They were absolutely convinced they were helping. From their perspective, isolated civilizations were like sick patients who needed healing, whether they wanted it or not. "What if we could prove that isolated civilizations have value in their current form?" Marcus asked. "Demonstrate this value," the collective replied immediately. "Release our ship, and we'll return with evidence of what our civilizations can accomplish without assimilation." "You will return willingly?" "We'll return willingly." The biological ships withdrew, allowing Marcus and Dr. Coughlin to depart unharmed. As they jumped to hyperspace, Dr. Coughlin looked at Marcus with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You just promised to return to beings that want to assimilate us," the scientist said. "What evidence could possibly convince them to leave our civilizations alone?" "The evidence that diversity produces better solutions than unity," Marcus replied. "But first, we need to prove it." When they returned to consortium space, Marcus called for an unprecedented gathering. Not just military commanders and government officials, but representatives from every intelligent species in civilized space. Scientists, artists, philosophers, engineers, anyone who represented the unique achievements of their civilization. The assembled beings filled the consortium's largest conference facility. Hundreds of species that rarely agreed on anything found themselves working together on a single project, proving that galactic civilization was worth preserving as it was. "The collective believes that isolated development is inefficient," Marcus explained to the gathering. "They see our separate civilizations as waste and competition as destructive. We need to demonstrate that diversity and independence produce results that unity and assimilation cannot." "What kind of demonstration?" asked Professor Velthar, the galaxy's leading expert on quantum mechanics. "A problem that requires multiple perspectives to solve, something so complex that no single consciousness, no matter how vast, could find the optimal answer." Dr. Coughlin understood immediately. "You want to prove that the sum of our parts is greater than any possible whole." "Exactly. The collective's fundamental assumption is that integration improves everything. We need to show them something that can only exist through separation and cooperation." What followed was the most intense collaborative effort in galactic history. Scientists from species that had been enemies for centuries worked side by side. Artists from incompatible cultures found ways to blend their visions. Engineers with completely different approaches to technology shared knowledge they'd never shared before. The project they created was extraordinary. A space-time manipulation device that could restructure matter at the quantum level, creating new forms of life and matter that had never existed before. But the device itself wasn't the point. The point was that its creation required contributions from every major species in civilized space. Krillian understanding of quantum mechanics, Zentari biotechnology, human strategic thinking, Zalani artistic vision, Gorvak engineering expertise, all working together in ways that no single consciousness could replicate. Each species contributed something unique, Marcus explained to the collective when he returned to Epsilon Eridani as promised. Remove any one perspective, and the project becomes impossible. Integration would have actually prevented this achievement. The collective studied the device and its creation process for 6 hours before responding. This demonstrates cooperative capability, they acknowledged, but individual civilizations remain vulnerable to extinction, conflict, and resource waste. True, but those vulnerabilities are also sources of strength. The fear of extinction motivates innovation. Conflict generates new ideas through competition. Resource limitations force efficiency and creativity. Explain further. Marcus had prepared for this moment by studying every great achievement in galactic history. What he found was that the most significant breakthroughs had come from civilizations facing existential challenges, species that developed faster than light travel because they were running out of resources on their homeworlds, governments that created new forms of art because they needed to process trauma from warfare, scientists who discovered revolutionary technologies because they were trying to solve seemingly impossible problems. Pressure creates diamonds, Marcus said. Challenges force growth. If you eliminate struggle, you also eliminate the motivation to transcend current limitations. But struggle causes suffering. Suffering is the price of growth. The question isn't whether to eliminate suffering, but whether the growth is worth the cost. The conversation continued for days. Marcus presented evidence, arguments, and philosophical perspectives while the collective analyzed and responded. Dr. Coughlin contributed technical explanations of how consciousness diversity enhanced problem-solving capabilities. Finally, the collective reached a conclusion. Your civilizations have demonstrated value in their current form, they said. We will cease expansion and establish contact protocols for voluntary integration. Voluntary? Beings who wish to join our collective may do so freely. Those who prefer independence will be respected. We will observe and learn from your separate development. The agreement that followed became known as the Diversity Accords. The collective withdrew to their existing territory, which they transformed into a showcase of unified consciousness capabilities. Meanwhile, the independent civilizations formed unprecedented cooperative networks that preserved their autonomy while enabling collaboration on galactic-scale projects. Marcus Chen returned to Consortium Space as the most famous human in galactic history. But fame wasn't what interested him. "What's next?" asked Captain Zextar, who had traveled to the Consortium capital specifically to meet with him. "Next, we proved that the Accords were just the beginning," Marcus replied. "We have an entire galaxy full of problems that require human ingenuity, alien wisdom, and cooperative solutions, such as exploring the galaxy beyond collective territory, developing technologies that require multi-species cooperation, finding ways for very different civilizations to work together without losing what makes them unique." Captain Zextar nodded. "The kind of work that requires someone who thinks differently from everyone else. The kind of work that requires everyone thinking differently from everyone else." Over the following months, Marcus found himself in a completely new role. Instead of being hired for individual missions, he became the coordinator for multi-species cooperative projects. Governments that had never trusted each other began working together on research initiatives. Military organizations that had been enemies started developing joint training programs. The galaxy was changing, and humans had become essential to that change. Not because they were superior to other species, but because they were uniquely capable of seeing connections and possibilities that others missed. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Dr. Coughlin asked during one of their regular meetings. "When problems were simpler and solutions were more straightforward?" Marcus considered the question while watching a mixed-species engineering team work on a project that would have been impossible just a year earlier. "Simple problems have simple solutions," he said finally. "Complex problems require complex solutions. The galaxy is becoming more complex, so the solutions need to be more sophisticated. And humans are good at sophisticated solutions? Humans are good at being human." But the real breakthrough was learning that every species is good at being themselves. The trick is finding ways to combine those strengths effectively. "Is that what makes humans dangerous and unstoppable?" Marcus smiled. "That's what makes humans essential. We're dangerous because we refuse to accept impossible. We're unstoppable because we keep adapting when conventional approaches fail. But we're essential because we help other species do the same things. And that's enough? That's everything." As Marcus looked out at the stars, he realized that the galaxy had become something unprecedented. A place where different civilizations could maintain their unique identities while working together on challenges that no single species could handle alone. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, misunderstandings, and problems that seemed unsolvable. But now there were also frameworks for cooperation that hadn't existed before, and mechanisms for turning differences into strengths rather than sources of division. Humans had become the specialists that every alien wanted aboard their ships, but more importantly, every species had become essential to the larger galactic community. The age of isolation was ending. The age of cooperation was just beginning. And Marcus Chen, the dangerous, unstoppable, essential human, was exactly where he belonged, at the center of the galaxy's greatest adventure.